have an obstinate refusal to accept the idea that a creative life has to be a life of suffering. It's not even last century. It's last century. It's so 19th century German.
There's a line of yours I've always loved, which is, happiness is a consequence of personal effort.
I think we have all had the experience of mysterious blasts of joy for no apparent reason. I had one today. I had one today, but it had a reason. But it was also, it felt like that. I was sitting on the curb on 17th Street and 7th Avenue eating lamb shawarma, which I never know how to pronounce. Is that how you, just out of a styrofoam thing, kind of sitting on the curb in the sun and just thinking, I have never been happier in my life than I am right now, and just this great moment. But also
because it is a moment, quite apart from the evening conversation we're having now, but it is a moment also which is a threshold.
Yeah, it's the transition. After this evening, I'm kind of quitting. And I'm going home to my garden and to my office to read slow fiction and write slow fiction and work on gardening and to come down heavily on the side of good cheer.
Stubbornness. Stubborn. But you know,
but the stubbornness is important to be a creative person, and it's important to be a happy person. I think it's important to be a married person. I think it's a refusal. It's just a gritting, digging in, and it's not. Stubbornness often has such a negative connotation, but there's a wonderfulness in stubbornness about simply refusing to let even the facts sometimes interfere with your insistence of your worldview, of a place of goodness and decency and hope, and that it's worth it to take risks and to try to make things even if people mock them, and it's worth it to choose a partner and stick with them even if it makes no sense to anybody else, and it's worth it to use the talcum powder, and and that you just hold your ground. And as you know, my favorite poet is Jack Gilbert. Okay, so the background of this is that Jack Gilbert was one of the most extraordinary poets of our time. I say was because, well, he's still living. He has dementia now and he's very old, and he could have been a rock star and would disappear for a decade, and people would think he was gone and dead, and then reemerge with an extraordinary book of poetry, and then disappear to some hamlet in Japan for 15 years, and people would forget about him, and then he would come back. And he was charismatic and handsome and magnificent, and he just wanted to live. He wasn't a careerist, to put it very mildly. And this is a poem he wrote about the cost of that, which was that he was obscure, and he was living in a tiny little fisherman's hut on the top of a mountaintop in Greece, and this is an argument he's having with God. And I'm just going to cut to the middle of it. What can you know of my machinery, demands the Lord. Sure, the man says, quietly, cuts into the fish, laying back the dozen struts, getting to the muck of something terrible. The Lord insists, you are the one who chooses to live this way. I build marvelous cities where things are human. I made Tuscany, and you go live with rocks and silence. The man washes away the blood and arranges the fish on a big plate, starts the ovens in the hot oil, starts the onions in the hot olive oil, and puts in the peppers. You have lived all year without women, the Lord says. The man takes out everything and puts in the fish. No one knows where you are, the Lord says. People forgot about you. You're vain and stubborn. The man slices the tomatoes and onions, takes out the fish, and scrambles his eggs. I'm not stubborn, he thinks, laying all of it out on the table in the courtyard, full of early morning sun, the shadows of the swallows flying over the food. I'm not stubborn, he says, just greedy.
Explain to me tell me a little bit about how it's a poem that means a lot to you, and that I was going to bring up at one moment, and I brought up right now. Tell me why you love it. What is particularly meaningful for you in those last two lines?
I love the stubbornness. First of all, Jack Gilbert is stubborn, and in every interview he uses that word, saying that that's how you have to be an artist, is stubbornness. And he uses it in other poems, like the one that you had picked out originally, where he says you have to have stubborn gladness in the ruthless furnace of the world. But in this poem, what he's saying is, I'm too greedy to try to be more successful. I'm too greedy for the privilege of sitting alone in a patch of sunlight eating a fish and some onions and olives to try to have people know who I am anymore. I'm too greedy for life, and nothing nothing short of that.